Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today for our book club. We are in the book Lassoed by Marriage that Barber Publishing has put out, and it's a series of 9 novellas. And we are blessed and honored today to have Gina Welborn here with us, author of All's Fair, and Angela Breidenbach moderating for us. So welcome to the greatest gift in Scripture Supply. Sit back and enjoy.
Hi there, this is Angela Breidenbach coming to you today from Las Vegas, Nevada, which is a little bit different than in the background than what you're used to seeing on these. I'm over visiting some family and taking care of some family business and things like that, so I'm just really glad that you all could join us. And I am so excited to introduce you to my very good friend, Miss Gina Welborn. And Gina has written All's Fair in the Lassoed by Marriage romance collection from Barber Publishing. And I'm also excited to say that besides being my sister author in this book, she's also my sister author in a book that'll come out next January called The Blue Ribbon Brides. And we'll have to ask her what the name of that novella will be. But let me tell you a little bit about Gina. First of all, I've been able to stay at her house and get to know her kids and her dog and her hubby, and her likes and dislikes, and those things were really, really fun. She hosted me when I was doing a speaking event a few years ago, and that's how we got to know each other, and it was really fun. We met originally at, I think it was ACFW, the American Christian Fiction Writers Conference, of maybe 2005 or 6. So we've known each other for a while now, and it's been really fun just visiting, brainstorming, and becoming a sister author with her. I don't think either one of us saw that coming in the very beginning, and we are so glad it did. So Gina is an ECPA best-selling author. She wrote public service announcements until she fell in love with writing prose. A moderately obsessive fan of Community and Once Upon a Time, Gina lives in Oklahoma with her pastor husband, their 5 Okie children, 2 rabbits, 4 guinea pigs, and a dog that doesn't realize rabbits and pigs are edible. Find Gina online at GinaWelborn.com. And in case you don't know, Gina Welborn's last name is spelled W-E-L-B-O-R-N. And her story, All's Fair, is set in Kansas, 1900. A long-held feud erupts at the Independence Day celebration, and Coral is right in the middle of it when the troublemakers are hauled to jail. Will the judge's mischievous plan to end the feud through marriage only split the families further apart? Gina, do tell. Take it away, Gina.
All right. Thank you, Angie. It is such an honor to be with you all today. It's lovely here in Oklahoma. I'm in the southwest corner by the Lawton Fort Sill. I'm at my church today because where I live is a small town and our internet out there is not very impressive. So I thought better likelihood of getting some coverage. I'm here at my church, and when actually, you know, I should be at home writing because I have a story deadline that Angie and I are in another collection called The Blue Ribbon Brides that will come out in November. And believe it or not, which I probably should confess this, but I haven't even finished my story yet. So,
I'll join you on that. Me either.
So part of my mind is, as I'm trying to think of, remember All's Fair and think about Coral and Jack and their story, there's this other part of my brain that is still sitting here thinking, ooh, I've got Reba and Levi, and I've got their story to write, and so my brain is a whirl. It's just a whirl. But so I guess I should tell you a little bit about myself. I started writing when I was pregnant with my child number 3. I have 5 children. The oldest is a senior at Oklahoma Baptist University, where they do dance upon occasion. They call them functions. But they call them functions. That way you don't have to, be so sinful in your dance.
Yeah.
So,
Just functions, yeah.
That's true. Then my next oldest is a senior in high school, And then I have a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So when I started writing, I was pregnant with my 16-year-old. So that's 16 years ago. And I had been an avid reader of Christian romances. I mean, I was a voracious reader. And there was one of my favorite authors. She'd written a story, and I just remember thinking, if she mentions the girl's bouncing strawberry blonde curls one more time, I was going to scream. And then I turned the page, and she mentioned it again, so obviously I was required to scream. And as the course of the book went on, I realized that the hero he wasn't very heroic. He was kind of whiny and kind of in that woe is me, which he had things going on in his life, but for a romance, you really want the hero to be heroic and to woo the heroine. But the problem was the villain, for me, he was so romantic. He was bringing her flowers. If it was the fact that he was the villain, he would make such a great hero. So by the time I finished the story, though, I was frustrated because I thought, that's it. All these stories prior to that, everyone she told, I just loved the story. I'd read it again and again. And this book, I literally threw against the wall. So I told a couple of my friends, I said, you know what, I could write worse dreck than that. And I don't think dreck is actually a word, but that's what I used. And so I said, that could be, yay, good. And I said, I could write worse dreck than that, and I'm hoping that it's an appropriate word. And so my friend said, prove it. And obviously, I felt obligated to prove it. So I did, and I promise you, the first story I wrote was worse dreck than the story that had been published. And the good news is, I wrote 4 more stories that were just as bad. But it began that process of learning to write. And one of the things that I've told fellow writers, when I judge contests, I tell students when I talk to them, is writing is a learned craft. You can learn to write just like you can learn to fish, just like you can to run, just like you can learn to ride a bike. You could learn to sing a song. Now, there's some people that are going to be naturally more inclined because, you know, it's easier to teach Kelly Clarkson how to sing than, per se, if you teach me how to sing, considering I'm pretty tone deaf. But it's still, writing is a wonderful learned craft, and you can do it. And I had enough people tell me, keep learning, keep writing, because manuscript is not going to be To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, we have to keep learning to write better. So I continued writing, and in fact, I queried an agent, Mary Sue Seymour, who passed away, and she wrote me back a note in which she said, she started away, because at the time, I don't believe ACFW, American Christian Fiction Writers, was in existence yet. Maybe Angie would know. But she told me to join RWA, to join online writing groups, to get into a critique group, and then to start entering contests to get feedback on my writing. And I did exactly what Mary Sue said. And she also told me to query back. But the more I started learning about how much I didn't know how to write, I realized I couldn't send anything to an agent because nothing that I had was ready to send to an agent. I needed to learn how to write. So it took me about 5 or 6 years of writing before I finally hooked an agent. I'm with Tamala Hay of the Steve Lobby Agency. Tamala is also Angie.
I knew I could name.
And then I eventually, through that and through connections with other authors, then I sold a manuscript, and then I sold another one, and I've had I've had 3 different publishers. Abingdon Press, which is the Methodist arm, the Methodist publishing arm, the publishing arm of the Methodist Church. I'll get it out right. And then also with Harlequin Love-Inspired Heart Song, and Barber Publishing, who I've had the most stories published with. I love writing Barbers for novella because we have so many different time periods, so many different locations, and they're very open and encouraging of authors to try that aren't always just exactly the same stories. So last year, in particular, talking about Lassoed by Marriage, back in the summer of 2014, Barber Publishing put out a stories for proposal ideas. One called The Oregon Trail, which has been released. That story collection came out. The Most Eligible Bachelor, which Angie didn't mention this, but both Angie and myself are in this collection. We have stories in this one.
I am?
And then, oh, never mind. Sorry. I read the wrong book cover. I sit there thinking, I could have sworn. Anyway, sorry about that, Angie. And
I got your name wrong.
so Barbara,
So you're a freak.
I know. There you go. So Becky put a call out for the Oregon Trail collection, the Most Eligible Bachelor collection, and then another one. It was called Marriage of Convenience, which I can't remember what she ended up titling that collection. But my story wasn't chosen. Angie's story wasn't chosen, and several other authors weren't. But had enough story ideas from it that she felt like she could put all of those stories that she liked into a whole new story collection, would be Lassoed by Marriage one. So I actually wasn't going to put together a story. I knew what my bachelor story was about. Knew I could take everything that I loved and I hated about the Bachelor TV show and write a story. And which, you know, the crazy thing is, since I've written that story, I haven't been able to, I can't watch the show anymore. I just, anyway.
That's not a bad thing.
That could be a whole hour's worth of content. So the next one was the Oregon Trail, and my story wasn't chosen for that, but that's because she wanted historicals, and the story idea I submitted was a contemporary. Well, for the Marriage of Convenience one, I had no story idea. And my writing partner, Becca Whittam, she said, I want you to come up with a story idea. And I told her that's going to be impossible because as a reader, I don't like Marriage of Convenience stories. They're just not, I mean, once they get married, where's the excitement? Which awkward. I mean, really, they're married. So I thought, now how am I going to do this in a manner? So my writing partner, Becca, challenged me to take 30 minutes and see if we could brainstorm an idea. And I was insistent that we wouldn't come up with anything, but she said we could. So we spent the first 15, 20 minutes. Every suggestion she came up with, I kept saying, nah, don't like it, nah. And so she told me I had to have at least, and I said, well, if I was going to write a Marriage of Convenience story, it really needs to come down to that idea where you have kind of that Romeo and Juliet, Hatfield and McCoys, where their families don't like each other, but instead of getting married because they want to, they married for the sake of their families. We're trying to help our families out, so it doesn't benefit us to get married. We're going to do this. We're going to make this sacrifice for our family. And so from there, we just kind of started coming up with an idea. We spent about literally 10 minutes working up what turns out to be All's Fair. But I wanted to tackle that idea of we all have people in our lives. Sometimes they're family, sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're coworkers, but they're toxic people. They're the relationships that they don't make us better people, and they tend to bring us down and just they're just toxic people. We've all had them in our lives. It's worse though, I think, when they're family, because how do you? It's easier to walk away from a friendship or a boss or in a job situation where it's a toxic environment and you just can't. But what do you do when it's your family? People who bring you down and they don't elevate you because your family's supposed to love you. Your family's supposed to be there for you, your biggest supporters. And for both Coral, my heroine in All's Fair, and Jack, these were not their biggest supporters. And they had to learn to accept the fact that their family they can't change. And so that is the basis of All's Fair, and the building of the story and how it just kind of came to be. It's set in Kansas because my older sister lives in Wichita, and as I was doing some research, I found out that Kansas was one of the top producers of apples at the turn of the century. And so I wanted to work that in. And the reason they're not the top producer or in the top anymore is because of the Dust Bowl. It did a terrible job to the terrain and everything. But I guess that's just the basics of how I started writing and how this story came to be.
It was great. I really loved it.
Thank you.
And I never thought of Hatfield as McCoy or Romeo and Juliet, but I did think West Side Story. I was wondering if West Side Story, somewhere in the back of your mind, got into the story.
No. No, it didn't. I guess I could confess that I've never watched West Side Story. I've seen little bits of it, but
Oh.
I've not seen the movie nor the musical.
Oh my gosh, Gina, you are missing out. The music is
If
just
it makes you any
spectacular.
better, I did see the Broadway performance of Wicked 4 times in 1 year.
Wow.
So it
My
wasn't all
daughter-
on. It wasn't all on Broadway. The first one was on Broadway in New York, and then we saw the off-Broadway, the traveling production of it in Oklahoma City, in Tulsa, and we actually drove down to Austin, Texas to watch it.
Oh, wow.
I would have to say that I probably know about 90% of the words to the songs and the entire play. We've seen it all.
My daughter's in New York City right now, and I think she has tickets to go see Wicked, so she's very excited. But you're going to have to go either online or get the video or something. You're going to have to see it because now you'll see what they're talking about.
I will.
When you're comparing it, it's awesome. Yeah.
I will. I'll get my oldest daughter loves Broadway. She loves musicals. And so I don't know why it is that we haven't seen that one, but I'll have to either find it on Netflix.
There you go.
So, what questions do you have there at the Greatest Gift and Scripture Supply store in Pueblo, Colorado for Gina?
What questions did you guys have? I was curious to know how the idea came to you when she fell in the water and lost her hearing. Did you intend for that to be part of the story, or did that kind of grow as you were writing it? I really liked that element. I thought that was pretty neat.
Well, when Beck and I originally brainstormed it, it was really just that conflict, between the families. So then when I actually sat down to start writing, I just kept thinking about how there needs to be a consequence, because because when we do things in life, there's usually some type of consequence. And for a relationship with Jack to have more of a conflict, there needed to be, a consequence of something that had happened. And so that was just kind of one of those that I was trying to think. I didn't want a line, because that's really hard to write when you're writing a story, to have a blind character. And I didn't want her to be completely deaf. So the more I looked through that partial deafness and the hearing of all of that, how that all worked, I thought this would be very appropriate for that time period.
Right.
And well, actually, when I wrote what it amounts to the prologue, it actually wasn't going to be a prologue. It was going to be chapter 1. But as I was writing it, I finished it up, and I was telling my writing partner, Becca, about how things were going along, and I was describing it to her. And the whole interaction, the character in that prologue of Hiram is actually the original Jack character, because they were going to be those high school sweethearts. And Hiram was going to be the cousin who had done this horrible thing for her. And so after I wrote the scene and I started writing chapter 1, well, what now became chapter 1, I was describing in the door, and my critique partner, Becca, she said, Gina, when you were describing Hiram, you were just kind of blah. But the moment you started describing, the original Jack character, once you started describing this man come walking into this flower shop, she said your voice changed, your expression changed, all of us. She said it was like, here's the guy who was the hero, and you didn't really care too much about him, but the guy who's the villain, she says you're just automatically in love with the villain. And I thought, uh-oh, I think I have to change. So I had to rewrite that prologue to make the villain the hero of my story.
Okay.
So I had to switch names and tell her to write that. I guess you guys are the first people I've told that to. Yeah.
I just
I told that story.
thought it was neat, and I got to be honest, when I got to the part where she heard the footsteps come into the flower shop, I actually scanned down on the page and skipped some stuff because I'm like, I got to know which one it is. I was kind of hoping it was Jack, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Stop, go back and read, just read it. But that was really a fun kind of suspense thing for me of, ooh, I wonder which one it is, because it could have been anybody at that point. So that was neat.
Yay.
And then the tie-in at the end with the little girl that had the hearing problem. That was really sweet.
Well, the more when I started researching, when my older sister lives in Wichita, so I went up there one weekend, and I went to several museums there in Wichita, and because I was looking for stuff for where my story was originally set, and the more I researched where it was originally set in Kansas, it wasn't working. So we found this little tidbit in a book, and I said, this is where my story needs to be set. So we drove up to Manhattan, Kansas, where K-State is, and we did some more research there. And then we went over to Topeka and went to a couple of museums and the Historical Society there, did some more research. And when I was there in Topeka, I came across this school that it was for orphans, and it was talking about the number of deaf children they had in there. And I told my sister, I said, this is just perfect. It's like every little thing is just, every time I research something, the stories just all come together.
How neat. I think that would be fun to be able to do that kind of research. And super fun when it comes together like that.
Yeah.
Well, it does. In fact, I have a trip planned in July with my oldest daughter. We're going to go up to Kansas again. We're going to the Flint Hill region, which is in the same area where just east of Wichita, on the south of Manhattan and west of Topeka. But there's this region there. I see it on the map. And so we're going to go up there and do a bunch of research in that area because I just sold another anthology collection to Barber that will come out in 2017, and it's called well, right now the tentative title is Seven Brides for Seven Mail Order Grooms. And so we set in that area, that region of Kansas, and so we're going to go up there and do a 3-day tour of Kansas.
Neat.
That'll be really fun. What other questions do you all have for Gina?
I'm having a hard time because I read so many books.
I have forced myself.
And I read this one quite a while ago, and I have a question, but I don't think that's the story. I think it's the other one.
I have forced myself, and in trying not to get people's names wrong, which I did anyway today, I forced myself just to read the story the week of book club so that I don't get them mixed up, because that happens to me.
Yeah, well, I read them all before the first week.
Yeah.
So what I really liked, and that was what was, I think, different for me for this one, Gina, was really fun that at the beginning you had some actual facts and statistics about the apples and all the agriculture that was there. I really did not know that about Kansas because, you know, now when you think of Kansas, you know, we're post-Dust Bowl people. So that's kind of how we picture it. And so it was really fascinating to know that there's a true history in that. And
I think maybe this was the story I was thinking of about the apple orchards. And the one of them didn't get very good apples because they weren't taking care of them.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that because I have friends who have apple orchards, very large apple orchards, and it's a lot of work. You think you just let the tree grow and pick the apples, but that's not the way it goes. That's when I found out about banana apples. In all your research on apples, did you ever hear about banana apples?
No, I didn't. I did just read a story the other day about these apples that have a citrus flavor to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is up in Wenatchee, Washington. You know, they grow a lot of apples up there, and they have banana apples. They do not sell them. They just have a banana apple in each field because it's very good at pollinating the other apples. And I never knew that there was a problem with pollination.
What? Interesting.
But they come out, they're sort of yellowish, and they sort of look like a cluster of bananas, sort of ridges on it.
How strange.
And they don't taste bad, but anyway.
I'm an apple
But I did find out there's an awful lot of work goes on in taking care of apples, and if you want to have a good crop, you've got to take care of it right.
Well, if you're up in
the story, I could relate.
Thank you. When I do my research, I try to get as, you know, I want to make sure that whatever element I have in the story, I have the historical research for it. So I went to the state extension, the county extension office, and I have little booklets from them on orchards and pictures on how to plant your orchard, and so the amount of research I have on apples is a whole lot compared to what is actually in the story.
Yeah.
I always wonder if the people at the museums and the county extension offices and things like that run out and buy your book when they see it published because they know that they were part of that. That might be a whole new market.
Well, true. You know, the crazy thing is the time of researching is because I went and researched the book in must have been like May of 2014, but no, 2015. So May of last year, I went and researched it, but the book didn't come out until January 2016.
Right.
So there's this time that happens between it, and I always think, yeah, I should send them a book and say, you know, here, look, I thank you for all the. So, in fact, the story that I'm working on right now, it's for the Blue Ribbon Brides collection that releases from Barber in November that Angie is a part of. That's right.
Wait a minute, November or I think it's January.
No, they bumped it up till November.
Oh, surprise!
You're going to be riding on the plane today.
I know.
Well, I had that planned already, but wow, now everything's going to be changing. Yep.
I know, because I even had to have our agent contact them to verify, and yes, she moved us up to November, which is good because I have a book coming out in January.
All my marketing.
I know. So, but the book that I'm working on right now is for that Blue Ribbon Brides, where it's 9 stories featuring girls that are involved in a county, state, or World's Fair in the United States, historical time period, and my story is set in South Dakota. I was born in South Dakota. Mom's family is all from South Dakota. So yesterday, 2 days ago, I actually called the Historical Society, the South Dakota State Historical Society, because I needed a map of Sioux Falls from 1907 or around that time period, and I needed the 1907 city directory. And I knew they had one because I found 2 places online that said they have the 19 copies of the 1907 city directory. The problem is they don't have it digitalized. And the guy, Ken, his name is Ken, who I was talking to, he kept saying, "Now, Miss, we're just the Mississippi of the North. We don't have any money to digitize these things." Of course, he said it in a South Dakota accent, so it was more like, "Oh, now, Missy, we don't have the university." Anyway, it's terrible. Now I'm sounding Indian. And,
I know, it's like, but it's very Scandinavian. It really is. I have to tell you, though, because you said that about the maps, I actually did the exact same thing for Fergus Falls, because the story in this book with Fergus Falls and Foxhome, where it's set where my grandparents were married and all that stuff, I had to call the Historical Society and get the maps and get the information and all that as well. So I thought it was fun doing that for the next story, because I did it for this story and I have the map on it. So yeah, cool. Okay, sorry, keep going.
Well, so basically, all of the research that I so easily found for Wichita, and I mean, there's so much I can get for Kansas because they've digitized a lot of it, but hardly anything is digitized for South Dakota. So so I ended up finding a 1920, I think, city directory of Brookings, South Dakota, which is it's about an hour or so north of Sioux Falls, and I'm going to basically use those people as names for people that are in my Sioux Falls one, because I can't. I asked him if he could print me a copy, and he said, "Now, Miss, that's only 224 pages." And I said, "I don't think I needed a print copy. I'll just use this one of Brookings, South Dakota that I found. It'll work."
Oh my goodness, how fun.
So that story is going to have a little less historical accuracy. Is actually people in the town, the names of characters that I try to use, and city businesses, because I just can't get, unless I make a quick trip up to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, I'm not getting that information.
It's a good excuse for a road trip.
I agree. Well,
I know my mother would love it. If only I had more than 19 days to write this story.
Is that what our countdown is at? Is it 19 days?
I like to tell myself it's 19, because if I tell myself it's only 16, which is actually what it is, then I start getting a little nervous. So this is one of those times that I'm choosing to lie to myself.
Well, how about this? How about every night we send our word count to each other so that we're sure that we're getting done?
That is a great idea. I told my husband last night that I'm probably going to need him to book me a 2-night stay in a hotel somewhere in town. I can just go sit and write, and I don't have any distractions from the kids, from him, from the dog.
I think the only way through that then is if we also leave all internet and leave our cell phones home.
That, you know what? I know that's the thing, because I get online and I can't, as a some writers, I hear them talk about how they get to a certain part in their story where they need information, and so they'll just make a little note in their manuscript to go look up that information later, so they can continue the role of getting written their story. Just get it out, get it out, get it out. And I've tried doing that, but I get to a certain point, and if, like, let's say she's wearing a certain color dress, then I can't just put a little note saying, here, then later go look and decide what color dress she's wearing. No, I have to figure out exactly what color dress she's wearing. So then I'm gone on Pinterest trying to find a nice, pretty dress for her to wear. And then I might see something else, and then I think, oh my goodness, I need an entire board on gluten-free dog treats. I'm going to start that right now. And so then about an hour later, I realized, okay, well, now that I have my new board that I just started on gluten-free dog treats, I picked out this blue dress for her to wear that I could have just put blue to begin with.
And moved on.
Moved on. But, so yeah, I need to get where I can just make some of those notes without having to, but like yesterday when I was working on my story and I was trying to describe this theater that and her dad were in, I ended up creating a board on vaudeville theater, and I created an entire new board on vaudeville theater, and then I ended up creating a board on the history of the history of South Dakota. So, yeah.
Let me look up your Pinterest and I'll show you off. How's that?
Yay! I do a lot of, for me, Pinterest. Pinterest is just such a blessing for the opportunity it is to create my storyboard, because I can research my setting, I can pull all of that information into one place for easy research. And so after the book is published, not so much with the Barber novellas, but with some of the other publishers, then they ask for things called, it's an art fact sheet, and then they'll ask things about what color is the heroine's hair, what hairstyle, what types of clothes does she wear, describe the setting that's in the story, and they use that information to develop the cover of a book. And so that's why oftentimes you'll see a book, and it has the girl, the heroine, and she's wearing a yellow dress, and it just so happens that in the story she's wearing a yellow dress, and that's because the author has created that art fact sheet. So creating these boards that, like Angie's showing, creating these boards enables me to, I can just take that information and then plop it into those art fact sheets. And then it's kind of nice because as a reader, you can go pick up whichever board it is, point to it, like there's All's Fair, and you can see the or actors that I've used as a visual for the story. I've got links. The latter pages are links for some book reviews. Those are some other author videos that we did. Look, I got a haircut.
Oh, this is really funny. I like that.
Yeah, she's brushing her teeth twice a day. So I like those details of being able to go and put that into the story, get that time period, because it really then just brings everything to life. In fact, there's that picture right there. Angie scrolled up a little too fast, but Angie, go back down a little bit. So you see that picture there of the girl with the straw, the American Woman magazine, and that girl with the straw hat and the bulldog. and I thought about that, and so there's that scene where Jack comes walking in, and Coral's there in the parlor with all those other ladies, and I thought, this is how I kind of imagined Coral. She's got this hat on, and she has this little cute little dog, white French bulldog, and that kind of set the mood of what is she looking like at this moment, so that when he walks in and sees her, he just falls in love with her.
That's neat. We'll have to go look at that. We can't see it. It's too small here, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and here I was trying to be so smart and show you.
So I have on my.
What's the question?
Do you ever get in the middle of a story and then realize you don't know where you're going, and you have to just stop and try to figure out the whole story all over again?
Yes. When I wrote, I don't have the book with me. When I wrote my first short historical romance for Harlequin Heartsong Presents, I finished the story. Actually, this was one, it's kind of a little different, but I finished that story, and my editor went back and said, this first half of the story doesn't really fit with the second half, so yeah. I basically had to rewrite that first half of the story. And a story that's specifically about what you're asking was the one called Masterpiece Marriage. It's my Quilts of Love novel. Angie has Quilts of Love novel too. And that was a story that I got to a certain, I literally hit a wall and thought, I don't know what happens next. I don't know how to get my people into how was this happen, because what I had plotted out what amounted to 6 more chapters, and I thought, how do I accomplish 6 chapters? And I had to do it in chapters, and so I stared probably for a day thinking, I don't know how. I don't know how to make what happens in chapters happen in 3, but
I know.
I did.
Here, I'll show you the books real quick that she's talking about. These are from Abingdon Press.
Thank you for sending us one of those, Gina. That's awesome. We have it in our prize basket.
Good.
Those Abingdon usually has their books. They should be in a lot of the CBA bookstores, and excellent about putting getting their books into bookstores.
Yes.
What number was it?
Yep, that's fine. Mine was second from the last.
Okay.
So whatever, my book was the second from the last.
Is it on the spine?
No.
There it is. I found it. Okay.
In fact, when Ramona, Ramona was my editor, when she originally designed that book cover, the quilt, she'd already picked out the quilt of, because that captured the stitching in the story. But down below, where you see the burgundy spools of thread, that wasn't the original picture. The original picture that Abingdon Chosen had this beautiful spinning machine. It was a spindle, and the problem with it was a beautiful picture. It just looked colonial, and and since my story is 1890, not 1790, I asked Ramona if we could come up with something different, and so that picture that is on there was one of the 3 pictures that Ramona found, and I said, this one, I love this one. I love that cover.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read it because it's got tomatoes on the front too. I don't know what that's all about.
My heroine in the story, her name is Mary Vars, and she is a botanist from England, and her father was a botanist, and so but during this time, it's harder for women to especially become a professor, even at a women's college. Their opportunities were limited, and that's what she wanted to do. so she did a lot of study on tomatoes. That was her thesis project. And a friend of mine who is an author, she was the one who went through and she taught me all sorts of stuff about gardening. So if there's anything wrong in there, it's Deb's fault.
I'm going to show really quick your website, and that way everybody can kind of see what it looks like and see some of your other books. Can you all? I can't. Yeah.
Do you have any way to put that on the large screen?
I'm trying, but this is. I think. I apologize. It's just too small, and I don't have my normal big screen with me from in my travels.
That's okay.
I do apologize, but she has the Blue Ribbon Brides up there, and this is what you can just quickly scroll through and see how many books Gina's got going on. I'm so proud of her. But when you go to her website, it is GinaWelborn.com, and I'm going to let it go at that because, as you say, it's a little difficult to show big enough on screen right now. But there we go. Do you all have any other questions or comments? And I will type her website in here really quick.
When you look up background and different things that way, you end up with almost more information than you end up pages in your book, right?
That is true. That's why I have on my Pinterest board, my Pinterest wall, so many other boards, because by the time I get to doing all this, read it somewhere. So. In fact, the story that I'm working on right now, the one that's set in South Dakota, I have 3 books that just came in a couple weeks ago, and they're books on Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The history, there's pictures in there, and so because I do much research, that's why some of the research that I did for All's Fair in the Lassoed by Marriage collection, I was using some of that research, so then the story that I just had come out, it's set in Wichita, Kansas. I was able to use some of that research, and that's why the story that I have that I'm going to be writing this fall, the 7 Brides for 7 Male Homes, that story will also be set in Kansas. So as I write, I sit there and think, who else, what other story, if I'm going to go to this effort to do this research, what other story can I get in this setting?
Right.
Have leftovers.
That's a great idea.
To be able to use all that information on another book would be very helpful, Yeah.
Well, Gina, do you have anything? What?
Well, yes. I want to say that when I'm doing my research, like right now, one of the stories that I'm reading called I Am Hutterite. Now, my story that's set in South Dakota does not feature Hutterite characters because I'd have to go a lot of research into their faith. But there's some details about South Dakota that I'm finding in this book, and so that's one of the things that I do. And then also the book that I just finished reading, Scary Close by Donald Miller. I'm always going into our local bookstore, our Christian bookstore that we have here, and trying to see what stories, what nonfiction things that I can use in my writing. And so this one, Scary Close, a lot of the details, it's called Dropping the Act and Finding True Intimacy, and a lot of the things that I learned in this story about faith, about having intimacy with God, having intimacy with other people, I was able to incorporate into this book. And so one of the things that when I write, I'm not an avid fiction reader anymore, but I am an avid nonfiction reader. And so, in fact, the last book I got that I ordered, I bought was the Annie K. Downs book that she had written on Uniquely You. And see, those are the things that as a writer that I sit there and think, these are these nonfiction ones that I get that talk about Christian living. That's the stuff that impacts my life. And so how can I take that and use it to develop my characters? So I'm hoping that as people read my stories that they get some type of, this is a thing that I've gone through myself, or that you can, that the reader can relate with, because it's, we all have those struggles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really love that, and that was one of my favorite things about the character development, is how, even though Coral's family kind of shunned her, she recognized that God never did, and Jack, even though he'd grown up in church, when he realized that as a doctor he was unable to save his uncle, what kind of a God would allow that to happen, and having something that was said in church really kind of just fester in him in a good way, and have him research that and search that out more with his pastor, and just really continuing to listen to the messages and the sermons and the Bible, and how he allowed that to work him back to a good place. I love that, because that's real. It's fiction, but it's real.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's the key to reading fiction, is to realize that that those characters and those lives and things can give you some sense of something you can follow or understand, and you can get in a third-party way that somebody can't just tell you, this is what you need to do. But you can watch it like through Gina's characters and things like that to see how that plays out on the page, and you might try it, or it might help something with somebody else or you might tell a story, or even give a gift of a book to someone who's going through that similar struggle because you read this good story about it. And people get great ideas how to have a better life, a better faith life, better marriages, and even better parenting, and sometimes how to try a new recipe for, I don't know, gluten-free dog biscuits.
Well, we got a recipe for applesauce.
That
this one, so
that's true. In fact, my oldest son, he's going to OBU, Oklahoma Baptist University, the non-dancing school, and so we were talking about, he's done some dancing, but we were talking about how that point where as a writer you take those things from your own life, you put those into the story. And so he told me, he said, Mom, you need to write a memoir. And I thought, there's no way I can write a memoir, because writing fiction is not the same as writing nonfiction. Angie knows. Angie knows how to do that. Angie has that ability to separate those both parts of her brain. That's a compliment.
I don't know if that's called a talent or if that is a real problem.
No, that's a compliment. But I sit there and I said, I don't see how I could write a memoir, because I love reading them. And so he said, you can call it Gluten-Free Jesus. A journey to an unleavened spirituality. And I said, okay, I might actually be able to write that memoir. I can work that. And but the likelihood, as much as I sit and I think, maybe I could, maybe I can't. But there's so many fiction stories that I think it's easier to take the things that I learn in the different books. Every single John Eldredge book that he's written, I could pull up one of my stories and say, I can see where I took those things that I learned from that book, and it's in this story. Or goodness, I could have brought a stack of books that when my Lifeway store when I lived in Virginia, I would go and I got to get this one, and because those are the ones that, here I am, a fiction author, and I'm just walk right by the fiction aisle, and it's like, what? You got Beth Moore's newest Bible study? Give it to me. Those are the things that's where I learn. That's where I sit there and think, how can I take some of those truths that God's teaching me, that's making me better, that's helping me overcome my wounds, helping me learn that I need to separate myself from toxic people, and having the courage to do that, because first you got to see that you've got toxic people in your life, which was what Jack and Coral both had to do, and then they had to get to that point of having the courage to say, I have to walk away. Again,
Right.
I could point out books that taught me that lesson. You know,
And what was neat is it also shows how different people handle the same situation. He chose to stay there and be the peacemaker. She was going to run, which, you know, not a bad thing in some cases, but it was neat to see that they were both handling that differently.
Yeah.
Right, and she had to learn to go, I will stay because of our relationship. And he had to learn, I need to leave. I need to take you and leave because of our relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was beautiful, the way that it all weaved together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we are coming to the end of our time together, so I want to give everyone one last chance to ask anything you need or say anything you need, and then I will prepare the video to go out and prep us for next week. So does anybody in the store have any questions or thoughts that they want to say before I let Gina?
No, thank you so much, Gina. I appreciate your time and taking the time out to be with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gina, what would you like to share before I close us out?
Well, I want to thank the bookstore for the blessing that you have provided myself, the other authors in this collection, to connect with you, to help promote our story, to get our writing out there, and I hope that it's been a blessing to you, to your store, you know, in drawing people in, because, you know, we have a cohesive relationship. We need each other. You need us. We need you. And so I hope that it's just been as much to you guys as it has been to all of us in this collection.
Great. Thank you.
Yes. I'm in complete agreement, and I'm so grateful that all of our authors could in some way participate in these online book clubs. And we have been doing the Lassoed by Marriage romance collection, starring the 9 authors, and the Greatest Gift in Scripture Supply Store book club, online and in person. And it's just been a delight. Gina, it's been a delight to have Gina Welborn with us. It's been a delight to have the Greatest Gift in Scripture Supply Store, Heather, and her book club, the online book club over there. And I'm hoping that we will continue to have a lot of fun together doing online book clubs and new stories and new authors and things going forward. So next week, we are going to be in week 8 of our 9-week series. So it'll be episode 8. The story that we'll be talking about is Kathleen Barbo's The Colorado Coincidence. And then our last week, week 9, will be Rose Ross Zedeker in Railroaded into Love. Both of those ladies were able to do a recording for us, and so we'll share those recordings as we go forward into the next 2 weeks. But they have day jobs. Not every author's lucky. Like Gina and I are truly blessed and lucky to do this full-time and not have outside day jobs, but we want to share those authors that do with you as well. So we'll have some recordings, a little bit about their research, and it'll be really fun to share those. So we shall see you all next week, same time, and I will share the event out, and just thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Keep smiling.
As we fly on, right?